I think we're good to go. We have Vicki
Awesome.
here. We have Tom. We're good to go.
Perfect. Well, those are really the only important people here, other than
Thank
everyone
you.
who's watching. You and I are not the important people. Tom and Vicky are for this presentation. So, welcome everyone. For those who don't know me, my name is Chuck. I'm the executive director here at Central Counties Tourism. We're thrilled to have you with us today as we start going through our second research program, and this one is actually going to be case study, which is pretty fantastic. So it is in conversation with Orangeville, and Love Orangeville is the new brand and campaign. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to have Vicki talk about tourism in Orangeville, a high level overview in the history. And then Tom is going to do the data that led to some of the great strides they are making in terms of growing the economic impact from visitors in Orangeville. And then we're going to have a big Q&A afterwards, which I think is going to be fantastic. If you have questions at any time, put them into the chat, and I will keep a log of them so they're all there. And then if it makes sense just for me to interject and ask the question while Tom or Vicky are talking, we will do it then. If not, we'll save them till the end. All right, so off we go. So we have two awesome speakers. We have Vicki Sword, and she is the Tourism and Culture Officer, Economic Development and Culture for the Town of Orangeville. And she's on our board of directors, which is awesome. She just joined this year. She's been great in being able to bring out the municipal lens from the Dufferin County and Headwaters area, which is phenomenal. So she's in charge of leading the implementation of the town's tourism strategy and action plan, and plays a key role in bringing the Love Orangeville brand to life. With a solid foundation of marketing and project management built through years of experience in both corporate and nonprofit sectors, Vicki combines strategic thinking and hands-on expertise in tourism development. Her deep-rooted connection to the community fuels her work, and she takes pride in uncovering the hidden gems in her own backyard. So she's going to be speaking first, followed by our very own Tom Guerquin. So, as most of you know, Tom harnesses the power of data to support and grow the visitor economy, helping stakeholders succeed. So, as the research and development manager, he analyzes visitation trends and uses data to tell compelling stories to shape the strategy and support stakeholders. He's got over 20 years experience. He's got a master's from Royal Roads University in Victoria, and he sits on the Travel and Tourism Research Association Canada chapter board of directors. So we've got some powerhouses here that'll be chatting, and I am going to pass it over to you, Vicki. I'm going to go on mute, and you just tell me when to advance the slides, okay? Oh, shoot, no, I lied. I forgot that we had our awesome land acknowledgement. So Central Counties Tourism, comprised of York, Durham, and Headwaters region, is situated in the Dish with One Spoon area. The Dish with One Spoon is an ancestral legal agreement between the governing bodies of the Wendat, Neutral, Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee peoples regarding the use of the land's resources, their commitment to future generations' needs from the land, and that the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Treaty is the oldest physical evidence in the world of a civilization having a high level of understanding of environmental resource management that informed the indenturing of rights of the environment and the future generations directly into their legal code. So now, Vicki, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Thank you so much, Chuck. Can you hear me okay? All right. Yeah, thank you for having me here today. I have to say that I am so honored that Central Counties chose to use Orangeville as your first case study for this Data Crunch series. It's a pleasure. If you could go to the next slide. So I wanted to start out by telling you a little bit about tourism in Orangeville. Orangeville in itself is a charming small town. It's located less than an hour from the GTA, and it is really central to a lot of communities like Guelph, Barrie, Kitchener. This creates a very desirable day trip destination in Orangeville. And over recent times, we have gotten some new accommodators to our region, and that has helped us to offer visitors options for staying longer when they're here, which is obviously the most desired route for them to take. Orangeville is a hub within Dufferin County. So when folks visit Dufferin County and go out to enjoy some of the beautiful scenic drives or some of the agritourism activities, they can return to Orangeville for shopping or dining and other activities in the community. Orangeville has identified 6 key tourism drivers, and I won't get into a lot of detail here, but I'll hit some of the high notes. Orangeville is known for its vibrant arts and culture scene. We have a strong network of artists and creatives in the area. We have an extensive public art collection that includes, and you can see the lower picture here on the slide, is our utility box art. It includes statues and murals and the popular tree sculpture program. For outdoor experiences in Orangeville, inside the community, we have over 35 parks and over 20 kilometers of trails in Orangeville. We also have Island Lake Conservation Area, which offers over 300 hectares of 4-season outdoor activities. Our historic downtown is beautiful. It's walkable. It is rich in history. And folks visit our downtown for boutique shopping, the culinary experiences, and we are very lucky to have an incredibly active and hardworking BIA that puts on a farmers market every Saturday. They plan big activities in our downtown. For those of you who might be in the area this weekend and the following weekend, we have our Joy and Lights event, which has a European style outdoor market. There's going to be some skating on not ice, but some sort of engineered surface that I can't wait to see. It's going to be an incredible event, so come out for that. We have an impressive selection of locally owned restaurants and cafes. And for festivals and events, there's quite a few major annual events that happened in Orangeville. And just to mention one is our largest, which is Orangeville Blues and Jazz. And that sees tens of thousands of people coming to our downtown every spring. If you look at the QR code on the slide, that just takes you to the main page of our website if you want to have a little more information about Orangeville. Next slide, Chuck. So as I take you on Orangeville's data journey, I should first start with some background. In 2018, Orangeville introduced the Economic Development Strategy, which identified tourism as a key area of focus for growth in the future. From that came the development of Orangeville's new at the time, Tourism and Strategy and Action Plan, which is a 5-year plan that was introduced in January of 2021. One of the key activities within the action plan was to develop a new brand strategy. And that's where Love Orangeville came from. The brand strategy wasn't just the brand itself, but it included all of the tools to help build the brand and talk about what we offer in this community. So some of the major pieces of that were loveorangeville.ca. That's our website. That's where we bring everyone to get the latest and greatest information. We had a bunch of new marketing collaterals and an annual marketing plan that drives our work going forward each year. That was introduced in February of 2022. So really where our data journey began was with the implementation of this strategy and action plan and wanting to understand the impact that it had year over year. And we really needed to answer that question both for our stakeholders and council, so they were getting regular updates on the work that we were doing and how it was impacting visitation to Orangeville, but also for ourselves, so we could test some of the strategies that we were putting into place or some of the marketing that we were doing and see the impact that it had in visitation. Next slide, please. So we chose to work with central counties for our data for quite a few reasons, but mainly it's because of the service that we received. When we worked with central counties, we sat down and talked about what our questions were, what information we needed to have, and we were able to come up with a solution that would work for us. Going forward, each year as we purchase the data, we don't just receive a data dump of information. Tom puts together the data in pieces that are easy to understand and easy to use. He gives us some trends that he sees in the marketplace and answers any of the questions that we have. So we're never really left with just data. We have support and we have someone there who can answer whatever questions come up. As far as why we chose geofence data, you'll see in this slide the map of our geofence. This is about 4.5 million square feet of our downtown area. Geofence data, I have it here marked on the slide, can cover up to 5 million square feet. So I think we're using a pretty good portion of that. You see on the map that the areas are broken into chunks. And what geofence data allowed us to do was it allowed us to take out the roads so we weren't getting that drive-through traffic. It allowed us to filter out things like schools, churches, gas stations. So when we see people coming into our geofence, we know that they're parking their car, they're getting out, they're walking through our downtown. So we know that the data is really solid. The data, and Tom might shake his head as I explain this, but I'll give it a go. The data comes from mobile devices that enter our geofence. It uses apps that use location services, and now the new methodology uses cell phone towers as well. So we're really getting a lot of accurate information. It counts each device once a day, so we're not counting people for multiple visits each day to our downtown. And for safety, it only includes users age 15 and up. It does have one limitation, and that is it does not identify why someone's visiting. So we often, and you'll see it as we kind of go through our presentation, we take the data and we can layer on top of that information that we have about our community. We know the activities that have gone on, or some ideas of who's visiting during what time. So you can really add insight to the data to get more detail. Next slide, please. I chose to put it in this slide because I think it's interesting. You're going to see a lot of data from Tom today, and I wanted to talk about how I present the data to our stakeholders and to council. So this is one of the key slides that I always include in my presentations. These are our results for 2024 versus 2022. The reason for the 2022 is that is the baseline that we use. It's our first full year with the Love Orangeville tourism brand, and it's a time when we really came out of the pandemic. So it forms a good baseline for us to compare to. I always show total visits, and we see a slight increase there of 4%. Those total visits include both locals and tourists. When we look at just tourists, those people coming from greater than 40 kilometers away, we saw an increase of 23% over that time. We also see that when tourists come to our town, on average, they're visiting just under 9.5 times a year. That tells me that when they come here, our experiences are compelling, they're being welcomed by incredible tourism ambassadors, and they're really happy to return to our community over and over again. When you look at the data that's on the right side, those in yellow, this comes from the TREM model. So that is Tourism Regional Economic Impact Model. That's a mouthful. We take our geofence data, so the amount of visits that we have, we plug it into this TREM model, which comes from the government of Ontario, and it helps us to estimate the spend within Dufferin County. It doesn't get to the Orangeville level, but it gets close enough. It gets us to within Dufferin County. So we can pull that data too. Next slide, please. This is another little bit of information that I like to show. We can see sort of the seasonality of our tourism. Tourists are that bottom line in the dark blue. What I've done here is circled some of the peaks, because you're going to see that our blue line is relatively flat, but those are some of our peaks for our high visitation. And the gray areas are what we would consider our shoulder season.
I'm just going to jump in here, Vicki, because this blew me away. Because if you look at the monthly visits from your locals, it follows what you would consider to be a more Canadian visitation style, where your peaks are from June until October, and then you're in the trough throughout. But you guys don't have these big, huge swings. Like if you were to look at other places in central counties, like a Port Perry, as a good example, there is it's almost like a bell curve in terms of when the tourists are coming in. So this, kudos to you guys for getting them to come year round. That's brilliant.
Thank you, Chuck. If you go to the next slide. Okay, how we use the data. So this is really interesting, because we've been able to apply the data in a lot of different ways. The first bullet I mentioned, we do regular reports out to our stakeholders and to council about how our tourism strategy and action plan, and really how our community is doing from a visitation standpoint. We evaluate the effectiveness of some of the activities that we do. So we do some marketing programs. We have some events, like each year we have our love sign that goes up at town hall, just to see the impact that has on visitation during those periods. We can also focus our resources a little bit better. Our budgets are not huge. So when we do marketing, we want to focus on the right visitors, focus on the right areas to do our marketing. So understanding who our visitors are, where they're coming from, is critically important. We also use that number of visits number, the 9.5 each year, to gauge visitor satisfaction. We know they're coming back, so obviously they're enjoying their time that they spend in our community. We also compare other data that we have with the geofence data that we receive. I'm going to give you a little story of how we've used this. We had visitor information center in our town right off of Highway 10, and it was an area where we had a lot of walk-in traffic. And we would capture information through the use of a survey. We found that after 2019, going into the pandemic and such, we were never really able to recover the amount of visitors that came into our visitor information center. But you see that we've got a lot more visitors coming into our community. So we were able to compare sort of that growth in visitation to the decline in how they were using our visitor information center. So what we did was we ended up closing the visitor information center that was located outside of our main downtown area. And we opened up visitor hubs in really high traffic areas. So we have one at our library that's in our downtown. That one's a staffed hub with visitor kiosks that they can use to get information. And we also have a self-service area at our town hall that's in downtown. And then a second one that's in our biggest arena in town. So that's another library location. In that library location, we have a staff there that can help answer questions from visitors. We also have another self-service area in that arena. We also use the data to support our community partners. We have had questions come in from different partners in our community. Either the first bullet there that was from our BIA regarding keeping store locations open on Sundays. We went to Tom with that question and he was able to get some data for us on visitation to our downtown on Saturday versus Sunday. We were able to provide the BIA with some of that data and information that they could share with their businesses downtown to help them make an informed decision about whether they wanted to invest in being open on Sundays. And at the moment, we've got about 70 of our 300 downtown businesses that open on Sundays. And that's a big increase from years before. So as you start building the businesses that are open on Sundays, you get more people coming. But that data kind of helped to make that case for opening on Sundays. Another was our Orangeville Blues and Jazz Festival. They apply for a lot of funding, and having such incredible data to provide for year-over-year attendance for the event is critically important for them. So they use this data each year to talk specifically about the weekend of Orangeville Blues and Jazz. And that's it for me. Over to you, Tom.
All right, so give me a second, Tom. I'm going to stop sharing and then let you share your screen. And then you can get going. Yep, and we see it.
Perfect. All right. Just minimize this and that. Okay. Perfect. Thank you so much, Vicki. It's always great to hear the beginning of a project, especially the outcomes, the implementation, and actually the successes from that. So we'll be covering today the in-between in our second research webinar. So as Chuck said, in case you missed our first one, it was an intro to tourism research. And today's webinar will be a case study using research to understand the visitor economy for Orangeville. And though we focus on Orangeville, please keep in mind that we can actually replicate the case study for your municipality as well. So I'll show you the behind the scenes, the methodology, but actually in a story format. The story data, it's going to be filled with insights as a chapter. So each chapter will have its own insights, as well as building onto next to really connect it together. So there will be a lot of numbers today, but rather than focusing on the numbers, I want you to focus on the process, the insights we discover from the data, and actually the data story itself. So first we want to, as we mentioned before, we want to look at what are the key questions. So for us, the first key question was, is tourism an economic driver? Though Vicki told us that tourism for Orangeville is an economic driver, it's still a key question that many of our municipalities are asked by their mayor, council, businesses, or residents. So I'd like to show you how we used the data to really kind of tell that story and how to make those understandings to show how our visitor research program to validate that it is an economic driver for Orangeville, and we can help answer these questions for your municipalities as too. Sorry, I don't know what's going on there. Okay. So as we see here, just a first quick recap on what for language definition. So we look at the Canadian definition of a term. Yes.
Nothing popped up on my screen. I'm not sure if anyone else can see.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Let me just. Oh, can you see my screen now?
I see a picture. Yep.
Perfect. Okay, cool. Okay, awesome. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay, so for us, a Canadian definition of a tourist is someone who travels 40 plus kilometers and spends their hard-earned disposable income within a municipality where they neither live nor work. As I mentioned in the last webinar, a tourist is not what Google Images show what you search the word. These are actually tourists, so let's actually call them what they are, visitors. Even one step further, let's change the word from tourism to visitor economy. So the new question now, is the visitor economy an economic driver? Bringing to our second question here, is a new tourism strategy action plan working for Orangeville? So as Vicki said, they recognize the importance of the visitor economy and create a new tourism strat plan in 2021 and launch their new Love Orangeville in 2022, which we're going to be calling the baseline. So rather than making decisions solely based on anecdotal stories, they understand the need to make strategic decisions based on empirical data to measure the results of their efforts and actually indicate if the plan is working or not. Since the municipality doesn't own any products or businesses, same with us, it is extremely hard for them to actually count the number of restaurant attendees or even who's coming to the area. It's impossible to know if they're locals or if they're visitors. So luckily, Central County's tourism has a research department, me, and access to resources to help Orangeville understand their visitation through partnership with Environmental Analytics and Destination Canada through the use of EA's mobility data, Destination Canada's mobilescapes, and able to identify the target markets, segmentation, where they're coming from, their interests, and so much more. So with the sound methodology, we're able to create a baseline 2022, measure it year over year, provide recommendation to increase ROI, and really reap the rewards for the town by growing its visitor economy and validating the success of their plan and data. So it's through our partnerships with Orangeville, Love Orangeville brand, and of course, Central County's tourism research. So, and our third final question is, should businesses open on Sundays? There are a lot of businesses closed on Sundays, and should this continue closed on Sundays, or is there an increased demand for visitors to justify being open on Sundays? So the data will really help us with that. So just a quick recap and almost like an introduction of where a story is. What is the visitor economy in Orangeville landscape actually look like? So thanks to Destination Canada's Tourismscapes, which is a free dashboard that anyone can access to, able to get a snapshot of what the visitor economy looks like for their municipality. So here we see the population of Orangeville, its growth of grade, but also what we're most interested in is the tourism's part of it, looking what assets it has to serve its visitor economy, number of employees, also the share of employment, but also interesting to see what the national average is. So it's slightly below the average. But even more so, how many businesses within Orangeville are related to the visitor economy, tourism businesses, or total businesses? So through the data, we can see that the total number of tourism businesses is 155. And this is really the breakdown of what those sectors look like, distribution of sectors. So we see that the highest with 84 represents about 54% of the tourism businesses for Orangeville. So again, this is a really cool tool from Destination Canada. So we see that 155 total tourism businesses out of total of 2,937. So tourism businesses represent about 5.3%. So this is the supply side. We wanted to know what actually it looks like in Orangeville. So now let's actually shift on to what the demand looks like by visitation to Orangeville. So as Vicki mentioned, we use Environments Analytics mobility data to geofence the downtown core to understand what visitation looks like from domestic same-day travelers. So these are people coming during the day. So Vicki did a great job actually explaining what geofencing is, but geofencing essentially is an invisible drawn out area where mobile devices enter the predefined area and a sample devices would ping based on location enabled apps and cell phone towers to connect the cell phones to the user's common evening location, which is their home, calculating the distance they travel to the area, as well as by corresponding city and FSA. FSA is a forest rotation area, which are the first three characters of a postcode. From that, we know a lot of information about what those visitors look like, demographics, segmentation, media habits, interests, and so much more. And before you start thinking about Big Brother here, please know that all of this data meets privacy compliance standards and all personal identifiable information is removed to prevent re-identification. So no one is tracking anyone. So from that, you can see here that we looked at the downtown core. We looked at who's actually coming to the downtown, excluding the roads, like Vicki mentioned. So we're really trying to do our due diligence in seeing who's coming to shop around the area, shop, enjoy one of 84 restaurants to dine in, or really just to discover Orangeville for the first time, or actually rediscover. And as Vicki mentioned, it excludes people who work in these geofences and excludes people who live in them. So again, we're doing our due diligence to see what visitation to Orangeville actually looks like. And as Vicki said, it's about 45 minutes from the GTA, but it's about 83 kilometers from the CN Tower. So it's still, Toronto's still outside of those 40 kilometers there. So that all being said, from that, we're able to see the count of visits to the downtown core and really differentiate between those that are locals and those that are visitors who travel 40 plus kilometers. So in the columns, we see the volume of visits from locals and also from visitors, but the red line looks at the distribution. So how many of them are considered locals? How many of them are considered visitors? So we see that in 2024, almost 24% of the daily visits to downtown Orangeville were locals. So although the focus is on 2022 and onward, I still feel it's important to actually look at what the past was. 2019 was a record year for the visitor economy in Canada, and people still use 2019 as a date of comparison and also for recovery status. And in 2024, we see the volume of locals is not there, and neither is the volume of visitors from 40 plus. However, since 2022, which is the baseline, the volume of visitors is growing at a much higher rate than the volume of locals. The distribution has been increasing year over year. That means that instead of 1 in 5 or 20% of visitors bringing new money into the community, now in 2024, it is almost 1 in 4. So almost 25% are now visitors bringing new money into the community. So other than 2022 being the baseline for our research, but keep in mind, travel restrictions were still in effect until October 2022. I mention this because some of the other research I've seen, 2023 was much lower than 2022 due to what I call bucket list travel. Here we see slightly numbers in 2023 for locals versus 2022, but not in visitors. We see consistent year-over-year growth for visitors and their distribution. Now, we see here, Vicki mentioned that the average, so the frequency. So we're interested in what the numbers look like. So visitation, we mentioned, is not quite there yet. But what's actually really interesting is once we start dividing the number of visits by number of unique visitors in onward, we see here that they're coming much more frequently. So how often are they returning? Well, we can see that. How often did they come in 2019? They were coming about 6 times. Now they're coming about 9 times, like almost 9.5 times. A slight dip in 2023, but like I said, that was likely because of that bucket list travel. So we see here that why would you travel to the same location? And why would you travel to the same location 9+ times a year? It's because you love it. If you love a place, you promote it to your friends and family through word of mouth, social media, and also bring them on your next trip. So Orangeville has truly won the hearts of our visitors with being their destination of choice, and has also turned those visitors into unofficial ambassadors. So it's really neat to see that frequency of visitation from 2019 has actually increased by 51%. So now that we see that the annual numbers, what about frequency breakdown of weekend versus weekend, weekday versus weekend? In other words, are visitors only coming on the weekends? If not, are there things for them to midweek and so on? So we see Monday to Friday here, aggregating those numbers. It's still surprising that so many of them are coming during the week and distribution is lower. But then when we look at the weekend, we see that almost half of them, half as many are coming in 2 days versus 5 days. So that's a really good success on coming on both sides and seeing that percent distribution also grow year over year. So on weekends versus weekdays, weekday locals come about almost 80 times, visitors about 21 times, weekend almost 75 and almost 25 there. So we see that how the distribution has really shifted onwards. Now, the question that Vicki was asking is, what about Saturday versus Sunday? So we see here visitation on Saturday. It's actually growing, volume is growing year over year, but also so is that distribution. And same when we look at Sundays. Sunday, keep in mind, a lot of businesses are closed, but we see that visitation volume is still growing, and so is that distribution. So in 2024, for example, we see that of visits were from visitors, and the remaining 73.11% visits were actually from locals. And then the same on Sunday, we see that it's 27.13% visits from visitors, and then almost 73% were actually visits from locals. But if we kind of switch the narrative here, if we actually look at what about distribution of Saturday versus Sunday, we see that locals slightly prefer going downtown Orangeville on a Saturday versus Sunday, even on things are closed on a Sunday. And with visitors, there's actually more visitors coming on Sunday than by locals. So we see here that mixture that things are still closed on Sunday, but the volume is there and is actually increasing year over year. But we looked at that number so far, but now what about economic impact? What does that visitation actually translate to money? So with the ministry's economic impact model, we're able to use the inputs from the daily number of visits from visitors and see what that area looks like to Dufferin County. So within Dufferin County, Orangeville represents about almost half of the population, and it's really a hub. So we use the number of visits to look at the input-output model into this modeling itself, but we made certain assumptions to make sure that we're extra conservative with our visitor spend. So the assumptions were, we looked at domestic visits and made the assumption that 100% are same day. Number of visits of activity is unknown because we just don't know. Induced impact and spend is also excluded because we don't know. And the visitor spend is for Dufferin County, but Orangeville is really its key hub. So we see here, based on the number of visits coming from visitors, we see how the visitor spend is throughout the year. But what's is interesting is we actually divide it by the number of tourists. We see that average spend from a tourist, from a visitor, is $72 going up to $90. So you would think, okay, well, what about inflation? So even though this increase is about $17 or 24% higher than 2019, when we look at inflation, it's still about $4 more inflation. The inflation calculator of 2019 visitor spend would equal about $85.32 in 2024. So they're still spending more money than actually what that inflation is. So great. So far, we've looked at counts, we've looked at distribution of locals versus visitors, frequency of visits, economic impact, but now where should we target our marketing? Where are they coming from? Especially how do we maximize Orangeville's ROI? So we see here that these were the top 10 markets of origin where people actually are coming from. So no surprise, Toronto, but Toronto keeps growing year over year. All of these are the top 10 rankings, but they're all growing year over year. So being kind of a numbers nerd here, I was curious on, okay, well, which areas are actually growing more? And so once we graph that out, we see that almost double the visitation is coming from Kitchener. Sure, the numbers are much lower than Toronto, Mississauga, but it's a huge growth doubling from that. So we really see that higher visitation is from Toronto and Mississauga. Biggest growth, though, is actually from Kitchener. Brampton is also a point of interest here because Brampton is not, it's kind of half cut in within locals and half outside of locals in that 40 plus kilometers, which we'll talk about in a moment there. One more point we wanted to look at here is what does segmentation look like? Who's actually coming into the area? So we've actually worked with Environics Analytics, and it's included in our ambassador program of actually what segmentation looks like. We took the 67 segments that Environics has created and grouped them to our 6 unique CCT segments. So venture seekers, passionate putters, family fun, foodie fanatics, and art lovers. And our lovers core, there's 2 different groups here. The core is more of the urbanites, those that go to the like downtown Art Gallery of Ontario, for example, the AGO, and TACO is more like community theaters as well. So we saw that need to kind of differentiate that, and we want to see how does visitation fall into these 6 different buckets here. So we created a little donut looking at 40 to 100 kilometers. That's because that's where the majority of our visitors are actually. So we looked at this donut here of 40 to 45 to 100 kilometers. And as I mentioned with Brampton, it's kind of right on the cusp. It's half in locals, half out as visitors. So based on this 40 to 100 kilometers, our segmentation, we see that this is the breakdown of each of our 6 segments. So not only are each of them growing year over year, but more growth with family fun. And if we slice it in a different way, we can also slice it by life stages. So actually, what life stages are our visitors? So we see here that a big increase here in family fun, but also in our large diverse families, middle-aged families, and older families, empty nesters. So really the targeting that Vicki is doing is actually working. And then I also want to mention, Vicki mentioned about seasonality. So what's that distribution look like throughout the year? Are the majority only coming on summer times, like a bell curve, or is it pretty flat? So Vicki and Chuck have spoiled it, but kind of we saw through the numbers that the volume of visitors are going up year over year each month, but also that seasonality curve is also flattening here. We see what that distribution of locals versus visitors are. We see that which month is the highest visitation and which months are lower to help those shoulder and off peak seasons grow more. So getting a little bit nerdier here on numbers, I'm sorry. We wanted to calculate what the ratio looked like. So seasonality is actually based on an R ratio value, which is calculated by the max value versus the average. So for Orangeville, year over year, And keep in mind that a value of 1 means that we have 12 equal months of distribution. If it was our value of 12, that means that there'd be all visitations coming 1 month. So for Orangeville, year over year, we actually see that number is decreasing, which is good. So that means that less people are coming through, like more traffic is coming throughout the year to really lessen that seasonality. So even from 22 to 23, 2% decrease, but then 23 to 24, 3% decrease. And from 22 to 24, we see a 5% decrease. So that seasonality is more spreading out evenly. So we had 3 key questions when we first started. And those questions are, is the visitor economy an economic driver? Is the new tourism strategy plan working? Yes. Should businesses open on Sundays? Yes, if possible. So super quick recap of the story I told there. We're looking at frequent visitation has grew from 51% from 2019. Visitor spend has increased 24% higher than 2019. Demand for visitation on Sundays is increasing. Targeting marketing is working, especially for GTA and family markets, and also seasonality is flattening. And really all of this is possible by the collaboration with Orangeville, Love Orangeville brand, us, and Environmental Analytics and Destination Canada. So now I want to flip over if there's any Q&A questions here, being aware of the time as well.
Yeah. Oh no, we're doing good. We still have 12 minutes. So
Okay.
there's I was populating it with some links so people could test out some of the stuff that you were talking about, and I've actually put in the link for the visitor profiles as well. So now if you want to type any questions into the chat, we can get them answered, and or if you want to put up your hand and talk out loud, we'll let that happen too, I think, right, Adriana? We can allow people to talk.
I think it'll help if they use the raise the hand button, then it'll
Yeah.
kind of alert to go to their profile and I can unmute.
Okay, perfect.
So there's a lot of data and there's a lot of like numbers, but like I said, I was hoping able to kind of summarize and kind of really look at those key insights that we're pulling from this.
Well, to me, what's really key is the fact that the results are a direct reflection of the efforts that Orangeville, Vicki and the team and Katrina have been putting into the, taking the research and doing something with it, right? So the markets that are growing are because they're focused in on them now, but they're focused in on them because that's what the research was saying to do. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy of things getting better and better. And as if I was a retailer in Orangeville, I'd be over the moon ecstatic because I don't need to worry so much about lean months, right? Like because it's being spread out now, the visitation, both by locals and by the 40 plus kilometer visitors. It means that you don't need to worry about laying off staff or closing or any of those sort of things. And the other neat thing was looking at the visitation in terms of weekday versus weekend. Visitors are coming every day. And a part of it, I really do think, Vicki nailed nailed it on the head there. Orangeville is a hub. All right, I live in Georgetown, so I think I'm within that I actually might just be outside of the 40 kilometer range, but we go up there for supper, right? We go up there for dinner. We'll probably be up here this weekend or next weekend to do the market because we stumbled upon it last year and had a blast. It's one of those places we go because we always know there's something going on, and I think that if you're coming from the north, you're the closest town, and maybe people are coming in for a doctor's appointment or or an optometrist or something like that, which is great because they're already there, and then they're going to still do all their shopping. So it is pretty cool. We don't have any questions. Come on, someone's got to have a question. Anyone?
Maybe we just covered it all.
Maybe.
Yeah,
Oh, I
and,
knew. Thank you, Emily.
Emily!
I knew
Okay,
I could
great.
count on you.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, great. I've never used these headphones with this before. So super interesting. And I imagine that we would want to follow a similar path in Caledon. But Tom, we've kind of talked a little bit about this before, but maybe things have changed. What kind of solution would fit with a more rural destination? Like Orangeville is an ideal candidate for geofencing because of the nature of their downtown. So, and Caledon, really the bulk of our businesses are rural. So this is very niche, so apologies to everybody else on the call that's not familiar with Caledon, but like, would you be able to geofence Alton, for example?
Yes. So there's two answers. There's two different options. One option is we could group different businesses together, have like business A, B, C, D, even they're spread out, we can still group them together and aggregate those results. We did geofence for Alton Mill as well, so kind of what visitation to Alton Mill looks like. So it is possible. We just might have to change the methodology a little bit by not saying 40 plus kilometers, but just define what that threshold is of a local versus a visitor. Maybe if they live in area XYZ, we consider them locals. If there are other areas, then we would consider them to be a visitor.
Right, because
So
the distances between the geofence areas might be from the east side of Caledon and the west side. We did this with one of our routes, did we not? I can't.
Yeah.
Was it side roads of Scugog or the back
I
roads
think
of
so.
Brock?
Yeah. So
or back
yeah.
roads
So
of Brock?
exactly. So we kind of filter those numbers, group them together. Sorry, Chuck. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, it worked out well, Emily. So there was 5 partners or 5 or 6 that wanted to know who was visiting to see if they were coming from the same area, so they could collectively go, oh man, well, let's focus our limited marketing dollars because best bets are in these areas. So Tom, within that 5 million square feet, did 5 different rural businesses, farm properties, the parking lots and the buildings of those, and then we picked a kind of a center point of where the middle would be for those reports in terms of where that 40 kilometers was, and then ran the reports from there and found where people were coming from. The other cool thing Tom is able to do, it's not easy, he was able to find how many people went to more than one of the businesses on the trail or on the route. So you can, if it pings the same cell pings in different locations on the same day. They only count once, but you're able to say, hey, they went to both. So
No, like for example, we looked at the ski hills in Durham compared to downtown Uxbridge. How many people only go to Uxbridge downtown? How many people only go to ski hills? Kind of look at that correlation between visitors.
Yeah.
But also another point is that I'm going to share my screen again. So we're just going to mention a little our
shameless
research program.
sales plug.
Yeah, I didn't want to phrase it like that, Chuck, but yeah. So again, this is our geofencing and postcode analysis, which is same as before, but now we've just launched now our overnight analysis. So Emily, this would be applicable for you because then we can see what visitation to Caledon actually looks like.
I was wondering when you were going to launch this.
Surprise!
Yeah, we're launching it today just for you, Emily.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just for you, Emily. And it's there's a lot behind the scenes that it took a while. I want to make sure the data is actually good. So we can actually look at who's coming into the region, spending the night, who travels 40 plus kilometers. So we're only focusing on visitors. We can see by 5 different key measurements is the number of nights they spend in the area, number of trips, number of nights per trip, number of visitors, number of nights per visitor. Each of these measurements tells a different story, but it's really kind of cool. Sometimes the origin city might be the same, but sometimes it might be different. So it's kind of really cool to look at, and we're also able to put it by profiles. So which prison profiles are making more trips or making more nights. So we'll really be able to focus on who you're going to target, and we can also do US and Canada.
So yeah, and
So-
so,
so
it can be done
so-
right at a municipal level. So
Yep.
all of Caledon would be included in that. And or any other municipality. So from a reporting standpoint, you're able to let your staff and council know, man, look how many people are staying here. The interesting part is it gets everyone, right? So if you're in a place that does not have a lot of paid accommodations, like a Port Perry or like a Scugog or a Brock or something like that, you are going to be able to tell a really good story. If 200,000 people spent the night on their friends or parents' couches, right? It's a good investment attraction story to tell potential developers. Look how many people are spending the night here. Most of them would rather be in their own room rather than crashing on a couch. It's one of the main reasons it's tough to go visit my father-in-law in Bancroft. There's no bed for us, and he doesn't like it if we go spend the night. We go when we do go. The whole family spends the night in a hotel. So
and also to that point, Chuck, it includes hotels, motels, but also short-term rentals. So
Yeah.
Airbnb is included, cottages. If you have a second cottage or a second home, visiting friends and family, campground, it's all covered in the overnight visitation. It's essentially wherever your phone is not majority of the year. It's being
Does
included.
it break it down by type of comms?
no.
Not yet, but that's going to be something else I'm working on for next year. Like I'm constantly growing things, so we will have a questionnaire after this as well, after this webinar, to see if there's any extra research that you're looking for that we're either not thinking of yet or we should.
Yeah. And then this can be broken down. So that's for an annual report. And Tom, how many years can you go back just to see?
It goes back to 2022. So
Okay.
actually the same as the baseline for 2020 we looked at, but also we can look at it by year. We can look at it by quarter and by month.
Yeah. So we've got data right up to August of 2025. At least July.
So there is a 2-month delay in the Canada data, 3-month delay in the US data. But yeah, it's
Yeah. So if you're looking for, when Tom first did this, he ran the numbers for all of, from January to July of 2025, which is really recent data. And was it 19 million overnight visits so far? 1.65 of them from the US in all of central counties.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So we can also break down by province too, though. So how many visitors from its provinces and from which. We don't know which cities from the US, but we know which states.
Yeah. So it's amazing how far data's come along in the last few years. So this is available to all municipalities and of course our regional partners as well.
Yeah.
That's a game changer.
And again,
Thank you.
I've been pushing this for about 5 years. When they first launched the product, it was 60+ kilometers overnight. I'm like, guys, I need 40 kilometers.
Yeah.
Change it to 40. The definition is 40. So they finally changed it. And now, so now our vendor Ronix Analytics is introducing it to other stakeholders, and the stakeholder tells them, oh, Tom must be so happy.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Oh no, sorry, it was 16 million. I'm a marketer. I'm always exaggerating by a little bit. Okay, so any other questions about I think Tom, you've got your contact info here somewhere too, right? There we go.
Right there. Yep, right there.
All right. So if you it's now 1 o'clock. So if you guys anytime you want to contact Tom, you can talk about what your questions are, and then he'll come up with some solutions on how to answer them. And that's it. So thank you very, very much. And we'll talk to everyone soon.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Brooke.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.